The science behind the abundance mindset provides intriguing neurological and psychological insights. It intertwines the brain's processing of growth and positive thinking with the impacts that these have on behaviors and decisions. Central to this concept is the growth mindset, closely aligned with abundance thinking. Neuroscientific research shows that embracing potential and opportunities significantly influences outcomes and motivation. This perspective reshapes our brain's response to challenges, aligning with the principles of abundance. Neurology reveals how an abundance mindset influences goal-oriented behavior, enabling individuals to make decisions that align with their aspirations. Psychologically, adopting an abundance mindset shifts our focus from limitations to opportunities. It cultivates a belief in ample resources and success. This mindset transcends financial abundance and can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life experience, underscoring its transformative potential in personal development and life satisfaction. Tony, in your intro, you started talking a little bit about your coaching methodology. I'm curious, where does an abundance mindset fit in there? And then, do you address the neurological and psychological aspects of abundance thinking?
Absolutely. Those are the essential, the key, the foundation of actually taking the client through the process of growing their mindset in alignment with the abundance they want to have in their life. And the key elements in here is when we work specifically on wealth building and money and the abundance mindset, to understand what abundance means for the individual. Because, for instance, because of the methodologies I work also impact people's physical and emotional health. For somebody overcoming depression or addiction, that's abundance for them. But for other people, for instance, if they don't have the kind of money that gives them financial freedom, abundance mindset means something totally different. So I take them through a process. The first methodology in Path to Wisdom, it's called ALARM. And ALARM, it's 25 principles, scientifically proven principles that bring you into the abundance mindset. The first one is about awareness. So awareness, we're talking about being aware of your external reality and internal reality and seeing the mismatch between that. Because most people will tell me, if I ask them a question, they'll say, oh yeah, I feel like a billionaire. And my next question would be, does your bank show that? Or, if they say to me, this is the kind of lifestyle I want. And then if you continue with the questioning behind that, you will see the mismatch between their thought patterns, their behaviors, their actions, their values, and their belief system. So there's no alignment to that. So it starts with the process of clarifying. First and foremost, let's start talking about money creation. From money creation, we're talking about then how they're spending the money. Then we're talking about how they're investing, they're saving the money, and what is it they use the money if they were to go into philanthropy space. And usually there's no congruence in the mind between what they're thinking, what they're believing, what they're valuing, what they're acting upon, and what kind of vision for their life they have. And most people, they don't have clarity of their vision. Clarity of vision when it comes to 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. When I work with corporate leaders, they might have a very fake kind of vision that was set up very quickly and written in words. But if you look at the rest of the teams, and if you look at whether that vision and those values that they identified in their corporate brochures is in alignment with the corporate culture and individual behaviors, they come to understand that they are far from it. Similarly, in our own life, if we don't have that alignment with our actions and being able to have specifically understand our own hierarchy of values in any moment in time, because the reality is neuroplasticity, the wonderful part of it that science now proves to us, that we can mold our brain in whichever way we want. So if we become extremely clear of the abundance that we want, we can actually nurture the brain to become a growth mindset brain. And one of the key principles within the ALARM, it's actually paying attention to the language the client uses. Why? Because our thoughts, if we go now into science and quantum physics, our thoughts will create that kind of signal that sends out into the universe. And then our emotions will create the kind of vibration we bring about and how we feel about wealth. And most people are not comfortable with either. They're not comfortable with what's going on in their brain, the head full of noise around the fears around abundance, and other people, they keep dropping their vibration around wealth. So sometimes I would take a client shopping. I would take them into a very expensive shop. And sometimes I would say, oh, I can't afford this. And then I would ask the client a question, for instance, saying, how much are you worth? You as a person worth? And, usually the answer would come priceless. They wouldn't be able to put a price. And then I challenge them on the other hand, saying, so what is it that stops you from making that affordable? Or what if you change your language in a way you would say, what can I do to make this affordable? So, going into those like limits, that perceived limits that clients have, and being a trained ear to understand the thought patterns that are going in the brain, and being able through powerful questioning and also identifying very clearly the top 12 values that the person has. Because if the person has values, for instance, let's say they have a value on wealth building, but the reality doesn't show that, that's actually a perceived value or an injected value that somebody else have told them they need to be wealthy or abundant, but not in reality living that kind of reality. So therefore, I have to go through the processes I'm creating within the methodologies to reshuffle their entire psychology to be in alignment with what they actually want.
I want to ask Bob, because I know that sometimes you have a musician's hat on, and that's been part of your past, writing this guerrilla music marketing handbook. I think musicians understand inherently the growth mindset because you're always trying to perfect your craft, you're trying to improve, you're trying to grow, but it's also a profession that's full of ups and downs. So I want to ask you, how do you think an abundance mindset really affects an artist's ability to navigate those ups and downs?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so for good 20 years, we didn't mention it really much yet, but my whole identity was and my first books 30 years ago were on music marketing, especially geared for independent artists who wanted to build their own careers. And I wrote that for good 20 plus years. And so even though it was about marketing and it was about tactics, there was always been an undercurrent of positive thinking and mindset in all the stuff that I've taught over the years. And what's kind of different about people in creative fields, musicians, writers, artists, is that as opposed to someone who's maybe selling a widget or a product or a car, that's those things are not, there's, yes, you maybe feel good about the product or the service that you're selling, but when that comes from you, when it's actually something that's personal that you created, that you wrote, it's there's so much more psychological baggage that comes with that. So I have battled that, or tried to mentor creative people to overcome that. I think creative people in particular have to battle that. Oh my God, I don't want to put myself out there. What if somebody doesn't like it? They're very sensitive, because creative people tend to be more emotional, and so it means they're also afraid of what people are going to think. And so I just try to remind people that there's value in the music or the art or the book or whatever that they're creating. And if you have any sampling of somebody who's benefited and complimented you on your work, that means that you're what you create, that unique expression of who you are, can positively impact people. So marketing isn't about being manipulative and shouting from the mountaintops. It's about taking that good feeling and spreading it to more people. Why would you keep that to yourself? So that's kind of in my marketing message, of focus on what's in it for the other person. It's not about being boastful. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Just one real quick thing I'm not a psychologist or therapist or anything, but one thing about the psychology of positive thinking is that our brains, we're like pattern making machines with our brains and in our minds, and this serves us well in many ways. Like, for instance, you don't have to think, once you learn how to tie your shoes or drive a car or get dressed or brush your teeth, you don't have to think about that. You kind of go on autopilot, and that frees up your brain to focus on other more important things. So this is a great aspect of how our minds work. However, the drawback is that also happens with negative patterns, and so that's why we kind of get into a hypnotic state of thinking a certain way, of behaving a certain way that doesn't serve us. And I'm glad that Tony mentioned awareness being one of the first steps. You really always have to constantly be monitoring your thoughts. Why did I respond that way? Is that the best way to approach this? What's the underlying belief that's triggering this emotion or this reaction that I'm having to things? And that's just like a lifelong journey of discovery.
Yeah, I want to ask James, because similarly to the ups and downs of a musician's life, the entrepreneur goes through that on a daily basis too. It's like a roller coaster. And at VaynerX, you have a case study with Gary Vaynerchuk, who has a very strong position on, like, he has a very clear mindset, and I would assume that kind of trickles down. But can you talk a little bit about within an organization, how how do you manage, like, keeping an abundance mindset versus scarcity?
Well, in Gary's world, it's all about speed, right? And I remember when I was first brought on 9 years ago, I came in as the chief integration officer, and he stood me up in front of the company. At that time, we were about 450 employees. We're a little over 1,800 now, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to help keep things on the rails." And he's like, "Hold on, 1 second. You're here to help me hover above the rails like the train in Japan. I want to move faster. You've made 25 years of mistakes that I don't want to make. Help me avoid the potholes and move faster." So it was really all about speed. And what we're finding with the entrepreneurs is, there's no shortage of ideas in the entrepreneurial world. There's a shortage of execution, right? And actually helping those ideas actually turn into action plans that they could then act upon. But what we find is a fearlessness in them. They're simply not afraid of making mistakes because they learn more from their mistakes than they do from their successes. So, I grew up in the advertising world, working for places like Saatchi and Interbrand, and it was an industry of fear, and this is a company of fearlessness, right? This is an anything is possible company in marketing. So, I think to Bob's point, there's real benefits to the marketing world when you're here to simply position your client for success. The beauty about working with somebody like Gary is he wasn't a marketer. He was a retailer. He wasn't an ad guy, right? He knew about selling product, and now he was going to figure out, how do I get underpriced attention in the marketplace on social platforms or otherwise to help people sell their products or services. And that's what we've been standing up to do for the 12 or 15 years that he's been doing it.
Well, maybe there's something to speed, and it doesn't give you time to think negatively. Let's go to segment 3, where we're going to talk about some tactics and habits.